All right. So the first thing that I think people really need to understand, especially if they're not that familiar with AI, is that that term can sound fancy, but it's actually very general. That when you think about what intelligence is the ability to accomplish a complex task or achieve a complex goal. Okay. Artificial means it doesn't mean fake. It means more in the sense of artifice, man-made. And so what you have is a machine, a man-made machine that's able to accomplish a complex task. That's what an AI is. Okay. And a lot of times people get hung up. They think that AI is machine learning. Now, machine learning is what learning means is when the ability to accomplish an objective improves with practice. Okay, that's the psychological definition of learning. Um, Data to a machine is experience. And so what machine learning means is the performance on some task improves with data. That can be supervised where you kind of know what the answer should be, or it can be unsupervised where you're kind of searching for patterns. You have like all sorts of unsupervised machine learning techniques. But not all AI is machine learning. In fact, there's rule-based machine learning. You have you've got generative algorithms that can be, say, evolutionary algorithms. Sometimes that's supervised machine learning. There's all sorts of branches to AI, and I think that people should be aware that even an algorithm, which is actually a solver like we have at NeoSwap, is accomplishing the complex task. So we have price predictions that are coming from machine learning. Then we also have a solver, and we've got heuristics. They're accomplishing a complex task of finding a mutually beneficial trade in a group, and it's a very hard task. It's not one that a human could perform, but it's not one where the performance improves with more data. The performance improves for the price prediction. It doesn't improve for the trade finding. Now, at some point, we may have a machine learning algorithm there, but people need to be open-minded and understand that if you are achieving a machine to accomplish a complex task, that you are still doing AI. And there's just many it's a big mansion, there's many rooms in it. Now, not all machine learning is deep learning. Deep learning courses, they use some neural networks. That's very popular. And not all generative AI is deep learning either. So I mentioned, for example, the genetic algorithms. Those are not deep learning, but they still are generative. So a good thing to do, I mean, there's all sorts of introductory textbooks on machine learning and AI. So if someone wants to reach out to me, I can help them with that. But just understand that there's many branches to this, and that when someone says they're doing AI, a good question is, well, what sort of AI are you doing? Now, I would say something we should all be doing, and hope to God that everybody watching this is doing. You should be using the kind of now widely available generative AI tools like ChatGPT or Bing, or actually Midjourney. I use Midjourney all the time. We should be using these tools all the time. And one prompt I wanted to share with the group that this is Copy AI is where I got this prompt. I find this to be incredibly helpful prompt, which is, I know a lot about X. Teach me the fundamentals of Y using terminology and concepts from the previous topic that I know a lot about. That is incredibly valuable, because suppose that you're coming into the Bitcoin ecosystem and you're an expert Solidity developer. You're going to get up and running much faster if you can be told what's similar and what's different between the tools here in Bitcoin and the tools that you're used to. And so here's an example of PSBTs, where I would encourage everybody, go in and ask these kinds of questions, get things explained to you. I mean, it's an interesting thing to do, is go section by section through the Bitcoin white paper and have ChatGPT explain it to you line by line. Okay. So you should be leaning on AI as much as possible for learning, dropping your code in, getting code samples. There's a lot that you can do. I mean, I use ChatGPT, I don't know, at least an hour a day, probably. Okay. And also for development, I would like to just point out that our team uses GitHub Copilot and Replit Ghostwriter also constantly. Ghostwriter is great for explaining what code does. Also for kind of generating documentation. So those are tools that I would say, use these tools in your day-to-day life. If you're not using AI tools constantly, you're going to get left behind. All right, for model training, some tools that we've used over the years, you've got, of course, Google Cloud AI, Microsoft Azure AI, actually quite good for images. I've done a lot of kind of image models in the past, especially back in the CPG world, where you'd want to be training kind of this is where you get into computer vision, where you want to classify pictures of things. H2O is, of course, a good kind of auto ML tool, and then TensorFlow. So lean on those tools for model training, and as much as possible, try to use them. Like, learn your tools and use them. It's just an hour spent learning how to use the tool it can just unlock all sorts of dividends. Now, why AI and blockchain? Well, there's kind of three reasons. And when I was talking about multi-way trading, I mean, here's a simple example. We've done trades with, 30 people, this kind of thing. Also, under the hood, when we have our AI proposed trades, you've got this sort of thing happening. Right now, we have a fairly simple implementation, but over time, especially as you get into pre-signed agreements, you'll have more and more complex trades happening under the hood at NeoSwap. This is this new type of commerce I'm talking about. This is these are Stacks NFTs being traded among 4 people. This trade is good for everyone. And there's no way you would ever find this. No amount, I mean, this is really superhuman performance because no amount of discussion or figuring this out would ever tell you that this is the best trade for these 4 people, but it is. I mean, it's actually mathematically provably the best trade for this group of people. Now, what makes this happen is, for one thing, blockchain transparency. The fact that you can look at the blockchain. Now, this isn't true of every blockchain, but for Bitcoin, it is true. And Stacks is true. You can look at the blockchain and you can see at any moment in time who owns things. That's incredibly valuable. Also, that gives us data that not only do we see who owns things right now, we can look at the history of the blockchain. And so you can kind of go wide, you can look across the whole ecosystem, what's been going on, or you can go deep and you can look in an individual wallet and you can see, okay, what's in the wallet now? What were the trading patterns from the past? You have basically a cornucopia of data from which to train your machine learning models, okay? The last thing here is that with a blockchain, you can conduct commerce without anybody's permission. That's the whole point. That you don't need write access to the entire ledger. You don't need to be able to change every entry. You just need to be able to change the ownership records for the people involved in the trade. So with the permission of these 4 people, we can conduct this 4-way trade. Okay, that's also going to be extremely important. I actually think this censorship resistance will just going to become more and more important. I hope to God there's not a CBDC in the United States. Hopefully there's enough awareness now of how bad that will be if that happens. But if that does happen, there's going to have to be we're going to have another option, an ability to conduct permissionless commerce, because otherwise, you post the wrong thing on social media and that's that. Your wallet's turned off. You can't buy bread anymore or whatever. We're going to need other alternatives, permissionless alternatives. Otherwise, we're just going to be facing tyranny. So this is very important that you conduct commerce without anybody's permission. Okay, so we kind of do a little bit of double click here on blockchain transparency. We know who owns what at any moment in time. All right, we've got the record of all previous transactions. So we have a source of data. And I can tell you, I first tried to do something with NeoSwap. It was under a different name at the time. It was called Tridimple back in the day. In 2017, when I first wrote the NeoSwap algorithm. And I tried to do it on Facebook Marketplace. And it was basically impossibly hard because you don't know what, you're trying to interact with people on Facebook Marketplace. You don't know what people own. Okay. You don't know anything about them, their past history. All you know is maybe what they posted. And even if somebody was trying to sell something, they may not even own it anymore. Even if by some miracle you figure out, Albert, that you would trade your surfboard for a bicycle, by the time I propose that trade to you, you might not even own the surfboard anymore. Okay. So blockchain transparency just gives us such a better view on what's going on, both in the economy now and historically, for us to try to make it better. Now, related to that are the data that the blockchain gives us for training machine learning models. Okay. So what we can do, and this is what we do at NeoSwap, we actually do develop machine learning algorithms or models that predict individual pricing estimates for each user on each NFT. For Stacks, we've done this with actually quite a high accuracy. On Bitcoin, this is really needed. So this is one of my asks, is to develop these individual pricing models. And note the difference. We're so used to centralized markets, we tend to think about what's the price of an ordinal. Well, an ordinal is worth different things to different people. And if you can do a multi-way trade, you don't necessarily have to have a sale. You can just have a bunch of items moving around in a way that's good for everybody. Okay. So you really need to estimate how much is the ordinal worth to different people. So that's, I think, a very important problem. And it's a hard problem. And that is a good problem for people to work on. Okay, now you can combine the on-chain data with off-chain data. Maybe you've got all sorts of other ways of collecting information. For us, we have our swaps, we have our auctions, we have surveys. There can be all sorts of other types of data that you can collect, that you can fold in with the on-chain data. And then putting that together, what you can do is predict how much people value things. Okay, so this is, I think, really important when you think about like Liquidium with the NFT loaning the NFT loans they're working on. These kinds of estimates are important. If you're going to propose trades to people like we're doing, these estimates are important. Estimating value, predicting value is, I think, a really ripe use case for AI within Bitcoin. Okay, and so then the last part of this is implementing the multi-way trades. So here's that trade we were looking at. On a smart contract chain, you can write the smart contract, everybody signs it, the trade happens. In fact, you can even potentially get people to sign smart contracts when they first list the items and when they bid on items. And then when the trade is found, the contract connects to you. The analogous activity, the two tools on Bitcoin that would be analogous to that would be the PSBTs and the DLCs. Okay. Now, a DLC is sort of like a smart contract where items go into escrow and there's an oracle that is watching for different conditions to be met. When the oracle sees that the conditions are met, then the items are released from escrow according to the instructions in the DLC. So the challenge here is, can you create some solutions using PSBTs and DLCs that allow us to get the smart contract-like behavior to make a trade like this happen? The last note here is, as I mentioned, this is extremely difficult to do in Web 2. I mean, even if you were to find these trades, you would really need, if these are digital assets, you would basically need read access to the whole database to make this happen. But with blockchain, it's very feasible. Okay, so this is what we need. We need some tools for supporting multi-way trading of Ordinals and BTC. And here's some suggestions. We need machine learning models for personalized price predictions of Ordinals. And keyword here is personalized. AI is great at personalization. Really want it to be the case that we can have targeted commerce, maybe targeted ads. You go to Gamma, you see the things that are interesting to you because we've been able to predict that they're valuable to you. But you have to do it for Ordinals, which is hard because the metadata are not well organized. And finally, tools for creating smart cross-chain transactions. This is more an infrastructure ask, but it'll be very important when it comes to applying AI to the whole Web3 ecosystem. Okay, so that's the end. In conclusion here, that together blockchain and AI support this new type of personalized and efficient commerce that solves the market. It really goes around the marketplace liquidity problem. We currently can run these kinds of solutions on smart contract blockchains, but many open problems exist to allow AI to run more efficiently on Bitcoin. And there's so many other ways you can use AI. There's the mining, there's mining applications. I mentioned generative AI. I mean, this is a huge field that working at the intersection of AI and Bitcoin, I think it's going to be really exciting for people over the next few years.